I'm Drew.
I'm Raina, and we're two best friends who have been seeing movies for 20 years together, and we decided to start our YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm.
And contrary to popular belief, it's not a horror movie review channel.
Although that was kind of the idea a little bit when we first started, given the amount of horror movies we normally see.
There are a lot of good horror movies that have been coming out, but today we are seeing a different movie. We are seeing Legend of Ochi.
So this one has been on our radar since we first saw the trailer before. I think it was Last Breath. Both you and I looked at each other, and I think you were crying, and I was teared up. And...
So, to be fair, I saw the trailer before that, and I actually had sent it to you, and you hadn't watched it yet.
That's bad. That's bad on me.
So I had seen it earlier in the year when it was doing the film festival circuit, and it made me tear up at home watching it. And then seeing it with Drew and having had the experience of seeing the Wild Robot together, which has very similar vibes, I just had an emotional moment because the trailer just seemed to speak to a lot of things that Drew and I are sensitive about.
Yeah.
And I was just sitting there with my best bud and I cried.
Well, it certainly flew onto my radar, but since that trailer, there hasn't been a whole lot of publicity. And last I checked, we're the only two going to this screening. Now, it is 4:00 in the afternoon on what is supposed to be an exceptionally rainy Saturday. So I thought that might explain it. But looking around this parking lot, there are a lot of cars here.
I think everyone's here to see Sinners.
Everyone's here to see Sinners. Gotta love seeing an original film, like not a franchise, not a series, just take off the way that it has. It's been wonderful to see as a movie fan how this very original, a little bit weird movie has taken off. But
yeah, just to add on that, I did want to say that in the time it took me to edit the video, so we filmed it on a Thursday, I edited it piece by piece over the weekend and posted it by a Monday. The film blew up. So it's always funny when we record these videos and we're making our predictions about how they're going to do and we're never really sure. And then by the time we get it edited and we get it out there, then maybe what we're saying is not always relevant. So who knows? Right now, Legend of Ochi just came out on Friday. Often our theater gets early viewings. It didn't for this one. So this is just sticking to the regular thing. Like Drew said, it's not getting as much promotion, but it does have a bit of an all-star cast. We've got Willem Dafoe. We've got Wolfhard, who's from Stranger Things. People would know him from that. And I'm not sure who the rest of the cast are off the top of my head, but I know that the main girl is kind of viewed as an up-and-comer.
Yeah.
So after we watch the film and I have a chance to look up her name and make sure I pronounce it properly, because I'm pretty sure she's Swedish, I'll say it when we come back out.
Yeah.
But the premise of this film, it's like these groups of people live on sort of this bordering fantasy island. So it's still somewhat real life, normal life, but there are sort of these fantastical creatures that they're aware of, but they view them somewhat negatively. And Willem Dafoe seems to have taken on these group of younger teenagers. Even though the actors are older, I think they're portraying younger teenagers.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be kind of like a Hunger Games age range for this.
Yeah, and just from the premise, it seems like the main character finds one of these baby creatures, builds a bond with it, but that's a bad thing in the eyes of society, and they're trying to reunite it with their mother, the creature's mother, and just overcoming whatever obstacles. In the trailer, you see them learn to communicate, which is really cute. And I did see some behind-the-scenes footage that it's a lot of puppeteering.
Yeah, I hear that it's not CGI. I'm hearing that it's entirely puppetry. I could be wrong. We'll double-check that. But
yeah, puppetry and animatronics.
Yeah.
I sent Drew a clip of them operating the Ochi, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's like Baby Yoda!
Yeah. And, I love the design of the Ochi creature. I don't know if that's its specific name or the name of the race that it is, but it kind of reminds me of, what if Furbies were cute and not scary?
They look like little monkeys, like little lemurs or something. So I'm really excited. And it does have really good reviews so far. And it's done the film fest circuit and there's a lot of good buzz. And Willem Dafoe kind of does lots of different projects, especially in his older age. He's always into something weird.
But you can't pigeonhole him. For every Spider-Man, No Way Home that he does, he'll do Antichrist. He'll do something
pretty things
in every genre. every, you know, rating from like kids movies to like extreme horror. Like you really can't pin the guy down.
Yeah, so but usually when he's involved in something, it's going to be good. Like even if it's not your personal taste, he's usually doing things that are well made, Lighthouse and everything.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to this. It's been a while since we've seen sort of like a family oriented movie.
I think Wild Robot was the last one.
Probably, yeah. So, and I feel like there might be similar themes in this with friendship and like chosen family and everything. But I'm really excited to see it. They're not doing a lot of promotion for it, but you did tag me on something where you can win like a keychain, and I was like, man, I want that keychain. Are they going to sell that keychain?
We didn't win.
It's a really cute keychain. I really like it. I'm not even like a keychain person, but it was just the little figurine of him was so cute. So anyway, it's supposed to torrential downpour when we're in the theater. I'm hoping that doesn't affect anything. We don't lose power or anything like that.
When you see us in a few minutes, we may be slightly damp. So just as a warning, we may look a little
especially since I forgot my jacket and I'm only wearing my mermaid sweater, so we'll see. But anyway, we're going off to see it. We will chat with you soon and give you our first impressions.
See you in a few.
Well, I cried through that. I thought I'd still be crying by the time we got out, but so that was a very beautiful film, and it's a shame. I don't know that it's going to get the attention it deserves. When Drew and I checked our seats like an hour before the film, we were still the only two. And then when we got there was about 8 of us.
Yeah.
And some of the kids were quite young, and I think it probably went over their head and was a bit too scary at points. I'd say like if you're taking a kid, probably should be at least 10.
At least 10, I'd say, and depending on the constitution of the kid. I feel like the trailer that I saw made it look like it was going to be a more family-friendly film, and the design of the creature is very cute, so I feel like it appealed to an audience that it wasn't entirely designed for. We said in our intro that this was going to be like our first family film that we're reviewing. I'm not sure I would describe it as that. There was more action in it. There's a little bit of violence, a little bit of blood.
To be quite frank, it actually reminds me of a family film from like the 80s or the 70s where they kind of like overshoot it, and then you watch it with a modern eye and you're like, we watched that as kids? Like, oh my God.
And there's a little bit of bad language in it, so like it obviously didn't bother me, but a couple of times I flinched inwardly knowing that there were little kids in our audience being like, oh, that's not necessarily a moment for them. But
it felt to me like a film that was made for our generation and the nostalgia we had around certain films. So it's a little bit of fantasy, a little bit of folklore, coming of age. So that's why I kind of think like the older kids, like middle school kind of age would be good.
It had this dreamlike quality to it. It's not shot in like super HD. There's a bit of a fuzziness to the look of everything. The landscape is astounding. I have no idea where they shot it. We should have stayed through the credits to see where it was shot.
It up,
but several shots I was just like, this is a real place somewhere in the world, and it just seems...
Yeah, you theorized Iceland, and I'll look it up, and whatever it is, I'll put it in text on the screen. But so just to give an overview of what the plot is, we were pretty close with our guesses from the trailer, and I'll try not to keep this... I'll try to make sure it's not spoilery. But Yuri is the main character. She lives with her dad, and her mom isn't there, and we don't know why. And she's part of this group that her dad is taking care of boys who go out and hunt these Ochi. So Ochi was not the character's name, it's the species name.
It was almost like a cult. Like they had a badge that they wear with like a wolf's head on it, and the dad's got this crazy armor that he's made for himself. And I was like, oh, this is like a crazy guy with this cult of teenage boys following him around.
Yeah, and so these people on this island, for whatever reason, we don't get a lot of the backstory, but they are afraid of the Ochi. The Ochi come out at night. There's references that like alluding that the Ochi killed previous characters and stuff, but I do wish the film had focused a little bit more on that, because it was really hard to be sympathetic to why they would be so against it. But it was very like, in that way, it was a bit watered down for kids. Remind me of Fern Gully. Like, it was trying to make it a bit like, this is right and this is wrong, and these people are in the wrong. But you know that as an adult watching a film like this, you're like, well, they obviously have motivations for going out and killing these animals. Like,
but you're not sure if that's just Willem Dafoe's character and it doesn't extend beyond that. Like the baby Ochi that she carries, they do encounter other people.
And they scream though. They freak out.
And they do freak out, but you don't know if they have the same approach of like, all Ochi are bad and must be killed, or if they just...
Yeah, I think if I had one criticism of the film, so it's definitely in the realm of family friendly, and that it's only like an hour and a half-ish. And just from an adult perspective, I would have liked a little more fleshing out around the mythology of the creature, like the background, like why was everybody freaked out about them? What was the history there? So that was like really my only criticism. But for us as adults, like our brains will fill in the gaps, and kids do too, and their gaps fill it in differently.
Yeah, and I mean, it also felt a bit like a fairy tale in the sense that, like, in a fairy tale, you're just plopped into the world. In Cinderella, there's a prince, there's a ball, there's fairy godmothers, like, just roll with it. It kind of felt like, this is the way the world is, we're not going to over-explain it, and you're just going to have to kind of jive with it.
Which, again, is very common with children's movies.
Yeah.
So it did have, like, a lot of themes that are geared towards kids in that regard, in the way it was written and edited. I said to Drew very early on in the film, I wonder if this was conceptualized originally as an animation, because it plays out as if you're watching storyboards. Like, the scenes are very deliberate and the way they're shot. And there's a musical score. I don't think there was a quiet part in the film. There was a musical score for every single thing. So if Yuri's walking up the mountain, there's like do 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 do, like kind of music, you know, which was very, very Disney-esque. It reminded me of cartoon films, right? And music, again, does play a big role in this film.
Yeah, but unlike Sinners, the music was very off-kilter. Like, the score, I was just kind of like, this is quite unique.
Yeah.
It sort of reminded me, again, another Willem Dafoe movie, Poor Things. Very off-kilter score, but it works for the story and the mood that they're going for.
I think that the soundtrack, it's all obviously original composition. It's going to win some awards. I don't know if it'll win an Oscar, but like, it's going to win some awards. It was really uniquely and beautifully written. And then again, music plays a role like around language and stuff, so that's really interesting. As the film goes on, it's very coming of age. Like, you're following Yuri while she's got this Ochi that she's trying to return, and you can tell that much from the trailer, so I'm not spoiling here. But it touches on a lot of aspects of just that, making that jump from childhood to teenager, and grappling with like seeing your parents as the real people that they are, who are flawed. And for me, watching it as a mother, there were a lot of themes of motherhood throughout the film, from the perspective of the child, not the perspective of the mom. And there were a few scenes towards the end that's what made me cry, because I just thought of my own little child at home and how, that experience was for me. And not to keep rambling and take over, but before I lose my train of thought, Drew and I were talking about the fact that it's a practical effect. It's not CGI. So you don't get this glossy, too real to the point it almost looks unreal. It's not
tactile. Actors in front of a green screen acting towards nothing. Like, you can tell that these actors are responding to a real animatronic or a real puppet that's there in front of them, and that enhances the performance.
And it had so much expression. It was just like Grogu from The Mandalorian. Like, this little creature had so much expression. It felt like it had a personality.
Yeah.
I felt like I could tell what its fur felt like from looking at it. And there was a lot of detail in the film, the costuming, the characters. But once again, Willem Dafoe was like a crazy, not-so character. Like, that man is just enjoying these years of his life.
It sort of reminds me of how Mark Ruffalo is in his I don't give an F kind of phase, and he's just going to make movies that he feels that he wants to make and that he considers to be art, and that was a very artsy movie.
Yeah. I did find it at times there were differing accents. So Yuri's actress is like Swedish, and then Willem Dafoe was kind of doing his own kind of garbled accent, and then Yuri's mom is Irish, and there's an Irish accent there. And I did find it, for me, a bit tricky to hear some of the audio bits because of the bouncing around with it. Mm-hmm. So I feel like I could have benefited from closed captioning, because there was a few times where I was like, what did he say? Like, that seemed important, and I didn't pick up on that, but I didn't want to keep bugging you and be like, what do you say? What do you say?
I got everything except there was one scene where Emily Watson's character was kind of whispering, and I was sort of struggling to make out what she said. I'm not sure how important. I don't feel like I lost the plot of the movie, but I do agree it was a little hard to understand certain parts. Sometimes the Ochi are subtitled, so you got a little subtitles there.
If anything, I wish the film showed us a little bit more of everything. Mm-hmm. I wanted a bit more of Yuri's experience with the Ochi. Mm-hmm. I wanted a bit more of the backstory. Yeah. I wanted a bit more of the resolution. Mm-hmm. How did they come back from this, where they've been hunting these creatures every night, and how did they turn that around?
Yeah, like the way the movie ends, you're just sort of like, okay, so what does the future look like for all of these characters now that this experience has happened?
But very fairy tale-esque ending, right? Like, okay, the happy thing has happened, and now we're done.
But again, there was more violence than I was expecting. For a minute there, it looked like it was veering a little bit into body horror, which I found interesting.
Yeah, that was a little more graphic than I was expecting, and it might scare young children. Yeah. So definitely, I think your kid should be at least 10, and that's if they're like a kid who enjoys movies. But in terms of for adults, I think this is going to really speak to the folks who loved, Labyrinth and Legend, and it definitely had a lot of callbacks to that, and some of the 1970s, like there was definitely influence from Star Wars, even though it wasn't a sci-fi, but just in the filming techniques. I was thinking about that with the fog and the mist and everything. It made me think of Yoda, and then again, the animatronics. And you mentioned Gremlins, it kind of felt like it came out of that time period. E.T. for sure. E.T. Yeah, it harkened back to that, which we're not seeing a lot of recently, because there is such this over-reliance on CGI these days. So we really aren't seeing that. And the thing is that technology has actually grown and improved so much in order to make these animatronics and puppets.
The comparison that I would make is, we were talking about, the fact that the actors were acting towards an actual object. Obviously, the Ochi aren't real, but it's an actual object in the room with them that the actors can see. And I think that helped the original Jurassic Park. Like the kitchen scene where the kids are being chased by the two raptors. Those were animatronics. Like, there were not full raptors, but like appearances of these vicious dinosaurs for these kid actors to play off of. And I feel like that made the performance more intense. You compare that to the CGI raptors in like the Chris Pratt Jurassic World films, and it doesn't hit the same. So this movie benefited remarkably from going the route of creating real puppets, not just the baby Ochi, but I feel like the adult Ochi we see were actual
they were too
things. And I feel like that assisted it. This movie would have suffered if it had been green screened up the wazoo.
I don't think it would have had the impact if it had been green screened. And also, as an audience, you connect with the Ochi better because they're more tactile. Like they feel like a real creature, and you're worried for them, and you're curious about them, and you really want to pet one and feed it. But overall, how would you rate it, Drew?
I'm hovering between a 7 and an 8. When I first saw the trailer, I was kind of expecting it to be like The Wild Robot, that it would just be a continuous tugging at the heartstrings. And for me, that only really came towards when she first meets it, and then at the end. The middle was not as emotionally resonant.
It felt a little Wes Anderson-esque to me at parts. Like a little, I like how you said off-kilter with the music, but even the dialogue and stuff was a bit off-kilter at points.
I want to bump it up to an 8 just because of the originality and just how well made this movie was, but I expected a little bit more from it, and it didn't exactly match my expectations or hopes of what it was going to be after seeing that trailer and going into it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I really loved it. I think it's going to be one of my favorite films of all time in terms of my personal tastes, and that I'll like rewatch it and enjoy sharing it with my family and everything. But I think between a 7 and an 8 is a fair, like I would put 7.5, and I think it's actually getting around that as a rating online. It felt like there was stuff cut that probably would have made it better, so I'd be curious to see if that was the case.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't necessarily say that I was expecting it to tug at my heartstrings the whole time, but the characters were kooky to the point that it sometimes took away from that.
Mhm.
So like Willem Dafoe's character was kooky and all, and that's fine. But then when the other characters are kind of kooky, like I don't know, it just felt like too many cooks in the kitchen.
And they didn't really develop any of these kids that are following Willem Dafoe around, and that includes Finn Wolfhard. Like,
he had less than 5 lines.
Yeah, you said at one point, this is like the 5th line that he said, and I was like, well, maybe it's going to build to something. And again, this is not spoilers, but I'm just like, why did they cast an actor who's so well known from Stranger Things if they weren't going to do more with him than they did?
It could have been any actor. There was literally no point to it being Finn. Like, there was no point. It could have been any actor. And I felt bad for all these boys in the background who really were just background characters.
Yeah.
Like, it made it seem at first like they were going to be like the Lost Boys, like Peter Pan.
Well, that's just it. There's a scene where Willem Dafoe speaks to each of them and calls them by their name, and it's like, okay, they're telling us who these boys are. We're getting a name. There was one guy who had like a dog tag on that said Ivan, and he had scratched into it the Terrible. So I'm like, okay, keep an eye on that kid. He's gonna like be the bad kid or do something dramatic.
And there was like nothing.
Yeah. Well, there was a little bit towards the end with the boys.
Yeah, but like there just wasn't much to it, and it just felt like I don't know, all this stuff surrounding Yuri and Ochi just felt kind of extra, and it could have been done better, I think, to make it.
Mhm.
But overall, I really enjoyed it. And I do hope we get more films like this.
Yeah.
And I think A24, as a studio, have been putting out a lot of interesting content and really kind of pushing the envelope a bit.
Yeah, but at the same time, A24 used to be reliably good for a couple of years there. Like, just seeing that logo, I'd be like, I'll go see that. But like, we just skipped Death of the Unicorn because we heard not great things about it. Was Woman in the Yard A24 as well?
Blumhouse, maybe.
Oh, Blumhouse, yeah. But I don't know. Like, it feels like it's been a little bit since like an Everything Everywhere All at Once has come from A24. This is definitely one of the better ones from that studio, but it seems like Neon has kind of overtaken A24.
I want an Ochi. I want a little figurine Ochi, like a little, I don't know, like I want it to be like a posable stuffy, like something I could like cling on my shoulder.
If Hasbro was smart, they would make an animatronic Ochi to be part of their like Furby line or something.
Drew kept comparing it to a Furby. I thought he just looked like a little monkey, but I really loved him. But anyway, it was a really enjoyable thing to do on a rainy day.
Mhm.
And coming up next, we're going to try to sneak in Until Dawn.
Until Dawn next week, and then Thunderbolts, which is getting amazing reviews, and I'm like, okay, maybe the MCU will be back. Deadpool and Wolverine was great, but it felt like its own thing. This feels like maybe Thunderbolts will move the MCU forward in a more significant and better way than Captain America Brave New World did.
And I'll talk about it more when we get to that film, but Variety put out a really great article about Sebastian Stan, who plays Bucky. What an interesting dude. He's like a Romanian immigrant. Like, you need to read up on him. Dude has quite the story. Very interesting person. So I guess we'll leave you on that, and we're looking forward to seeing our next couple of movies. Thanks for joining us on a rainy Saturday.
And make sure to like, subscribe, do all that YouTube stuff. We'll see you in the next one.
Thanks so much, guys.